Welcome to the class of Historic Building Protection Design. I'm Li Wei of Shenyang University of Technology. From today on, we will learn a new course, Historic Building Protection Design. First of all, let's study the first chapter, Introduction. This course is mainly concerned with the protection and the design of historical buildings in the present situation. To solve the problem of preservation and reuse of historical buildings, students first need to know what historic building is and what the true value of historic buildings. This chapter covers the concept, value, present situation, and the protection significance of historic building. First, let's learn the concepts of historic building. This section starts with the related concepts of historic building and finally leads to the concept of historic building, which is the main point of this course. Historic building preservation belongs to heritage protection, so we first need to understand the concept of cultural heritage. Cultural heritage refers to all the material symbols inherited from the various cultures of the past. It gives each particular place its identifiable features. The cultural heritage system of our country includes tangible and intangible cultural heritage. The tangible cultural heritage mainly includes three levels: cultural relics with historical, artistic, and scientific values, historical and cultural districts, historical and cultural cities, famous towns and villages. Immovable cultural relics mainly refer to the cultural relics building. Here is the first concept that we want to introduce. Cultural relics buildings are immovable cultural relics, which are approved by the state or local government departments and are listed in the protection list. China has three classes of cultural relics buildings. The first of which is the Key National Cultural Relics Protection Unit determined by the State Administration of Cultural Relics. The second class is the Provincial Cultural Relics Protection Unit determined by the provincial government. The third is the cultural relics at the municipal and county levels determined by the municipal and county governments. Based on construction types, these cultural relics protection units mainly include ancient sites, ancient bones, ancient buildings, grottos and stone coverings, modern important historical records, and representative buildings. In this lecture, we focus on three concepts: ancient site, ancient building, important modern historical site, and representative building. First, let's discuss ancient site. Ancient site refers to the humanistic landscape that witnessed the development of a civilization and a historical event. Specifically, it refers to a partially damaged, incomplete in form or structure entity which has lost its original function and needs historical research. It mainly refers to ground and underground rammed earth site. This picture shows the capital city of Han Dynasty after restoration, the present situation of southeast corner building and the local city of Chang'an. What is the concept of ancient building? It refers to residential buildings and public buildings with great historical and artistic value before the founding of the People's Republic of China, 1949. Can you identify the example? It is located in the east axis of the Forbidden City in Shenyang. It is the typical center of the Qing dynasty before entering the pass, typical of ancient building. Important modern historical sites and representative buildings mainly refer to the revolutionary ruins and relics, revolutionary sites, famous people's homes, memorial buildings, and so on. According to the 8th batch of National Key Culture Relics Protection Units issued by the state in 2019, there are 234 such units accounting for 30.7% of the total. In recent years, modern architectural heritage has received more and more attention. This picture is the restoration of the homes in Shikumen, Shanghai, the site of the first Communist Party Congress. The above mainly reviews some concepts related to historic building. What is historic building? Does it belong to antique building? What is its place in Chinese cultural heritage system? Let's uncover the veil of historic building. First of all, look at the definition of historic building from the international background. Until the middle of the 20th century, the West focused on the architectural heritage of high-grade monuments that had a great impact on the history of human civilization. It is not until the Amsterdam Declaration of 1975 that the term of historic building was first mentioned. International attention has been paid to the multiple values of historic building in the aspects of history, emotion, economy, and so on, and how to continue it. Here, historic does not emphasize important historical significance and impact, but only means historical. Sir Felton, chairman of the International Council on Monuments and Sites, defined historic buildings in 1982. Historic building is a building that amazes us and makes us want to know more about the peoples and cultures that created it. It has architectural, aesthetic, historical, archaeological, economic, social, even political, and spiritual or symbolic value. But the initial shock is always emotional, because it is a symbol of our cultural self-confidence and continuity, part of our traditional heritage. In 2005, the Code for the Protection of Historic and Cultural Cities in China defined historic building as buildings, structures with certain historical, scientific, and artistic values reflecting the city's historical features and local characteristics. And its protection and improvement is defined as the type of buildings that are lower than those of cultural relics and protected buildings, and higher than those of general constructions, structures, and it is clearly stipulated that historic buildings in historical and cultural streets should not be demolished. The regulations on the protection of historic and cultural famous cities, towns, and villages promulgated in 2008 define historic buildings as buildings and structures with certain protection values reflecting historical features and local characteristics, not published as cultural relics, protection units, and not registered as immovable cultural relics. In the Plan for the Protection of Historic and Cultural Cities issued in 2019, China has defined historic building precisely. That is, the buildings and the structures which have certain protection value determined and announced by the people's governments of cities and counties, and which reflect the historical features and local characteristics. Each city in our country has also defined the local historic buildings through various local laws and regulations, according to the characteristics of the city. Take Shenyang, for example. In the measures for the protection and management of historical and cultural districts and historic buildings of Shenyang, issued in 2020, Shenyang shall recognize it as historic building which should be built over 50 years and has one of the following situations. The first is it has artistic characteristics and scientific research value in architectural style, engineering technology, structural form, building materials, or construction technology. The second is it reflects the city's historical, cultural, and regional characteristics. The third is it is related to major historical events, famous historical figures, or important historical institutions, and has special commemorative or educational significance. The fourth is it is representative works of famous architects. The fifth is it is the representative workshop, shop, factory, and warehouse in the industrial development history. The sixth is other buildings of historical and cultural significance. Of course, building structures with special historical, scientific, artistic values or important commemorative, educational, and Euro landmark can also be identified as historical buildings even if it is constructed in less than 50 years. By 2020, Shenyang had issued 6 catalogs of historical buildings, which were approved under management measures. All of the above are legal and regulatory levels, or relatively narrow definition. Historic buildings should broadly refer to ancient buildings or modern buildings with certain years and protection value, covering all levels of cultural relics and non-cultural buildings, which is in high agreement with the meaning of historic building in English. The core of the historic building protection design in this course is the preservation and the continuation of the historic building in the continuous existence process. The cultural relics buildings are strictly restricted by the protection law of cultural relics. Therefore, the object of this course is the historic building of non-relics, which is divided into the historic buildings published by the government and a large number of general historic buildings distributed in cities, towns, and historical districts with certain historical, scientific, and artistic values. Most of them are still in use or have the function of use, and they need protection. One of the purposes of protection is to use it adaptively without compromising the values to meet the needs of modern functions.